Friday, a garbage man from Cleveland, Latin Spitfire Googie Gomez, and a gang of Midwest mafiosi are just a few of the characters you'll encounter in Richard Lester's hilarious Night at the Baths. Don't miss The Ritz, starring Rita Moreno and Jack Weston. The Ritz, it'll turn an ordinary scrub-up into an outrageous experience. Premiering Friday. David Essex stars in a backstage look at the meteoric rise and tragic downfall of an international rock idol, Stardust. Then, John Mills and David Burney uncover a series of bizarre murders done in 12th century style in Dirty Night's Work, Saturday. Sunday, Peter Finch and Faye Dunaway head a star-studded cast in Paddy Chayefsky's outrageous and tragic comic vision of the TV industry, Network, winner of 4 Oscars and premiering Sunday for the first time on television.
You're watching Home Box Office.
The story that was a billion years in the making of a boy, a girl, and a universe. One of the most dazzling entertainments of all time. Star Wars next.
The most memorable moments in and out of the ring. Friday, February 11th.
Enjoy 24-hour-a-day entertainment here on HBO.
The following feature has been rated PG by the Motion Picture Association of America. Parental guidance is suggested.
Next on HBO, when the boys of summer went off to fight in the big one, Tom Hanks, Gina Davis, and Madonna decided to form a league of their own. Next on HBO.
A few things in life are guaranteed. For one, there's a new movie every Saturday night on HBO.
You got a problem with that?
No repeats.
Yeah, great.
52 weeks a year.
What do they do the rest of the time?
Guaranteed.
Hey.
This week, Free Willy, a whale of a movie.
Sure, Willie's grateful.
How far would you go for an underwater friend?
Let's Free Willy.
It's nice to have one guarantee in life.
What is that?
A new movie every Saturday night. Guaranteed. On HBO.
Every month, real-life kids, real-life problems, real-life stories. Calvin Muir always dreamed of being an altar boy.
I used to pray that something like this would happen to me. What do you have to do? I don't know. If you just do what Father says.
He never imagined his dream would turn into a nightmare.
I know what you're doing at church. Oh, you're going to the rest of the Father and the Father, that's
person you trusted most would betray him.
Calvin's the priest. He can do what he wants. We're the ones who will get blamed.
Did you do something that you're not telling me?
A child betrayed. The Calvin Muir story.
I don't want to be an old boy anymore.
Every kid's got a story, but not always one he wants to tell. Life stories, families in crisis.
Premieres Tuesday, June 7th on HBO.
Are you ready to listen? HBO on Standard Etiquette. One must always serve from the left. Wimbledon 94, live, coming June, only on HBO, setting the standard for 20 years. Tonight, it's on HBO. At 8, Gina Davis, Tom Hanks, Madonna, Playing the Field, A League of Their Own. At 10:15, How Do You Stop a Psycho Killer? Leo Rossi, Relentless 3. And at 11:45, Tom Berenger and Billy Zane stalk the jungle and take in the sights. Sniper. A League of Their Own, Relentless 3, and Sniper. HBO is on tonight.
The following movie is rated PG. The following movie is rated PG-13.
Here we go.
Performance rallying, one of the most difficult motorsports in the world, made even more difficult in the snow. The Sports Car Club of America's Pro Rally Championship begins each season with a winter rally. Rally teams concentrate their efforts on a tire choice for the wide range of winter conditions, but this year there's water and mud to deal with as well. This is the SCCA Pro Rally Championship. I'm your host, Russ Rosendale. The Pro Rally season kicks off with the Snowdrift Rally, centered in Atlanta, Michigan. With the new season comes a new lineup for some teams, as well as new teams joining for the entire series. Mitsubishi's now backing a two-car effort headed by Reese Millen and an open-class Lancer Evo, with a Group 2 Lancer for Lachlan O'Sullivan. Paul Schwanier returns to Hyundai, but with 2 new team members for this event. Frank Sprongel, former Canadian champion and snow expert, will be piloting a Hyundai Elantra, while British champion Mark Higgins makes his U.S. debut aboard a Hyundai Tiburon. His brother David Higgins will be contesting the championship in a privately owned Subaru. Subaru Rally Team USA is back, but with last year's rookie sensation Raman Alagaman as the team's second driver in an open-class car. Those are mighty big shoes to fill for a driver with only 15 rallies on his record. Last year's champion Mark Lovell returns to defend his title and had the dubious honor of starting first on the road. The first leg of the Snowdrift Rally consists of 5 stages, 2 south of Atlanta, then 1 north of town, a quick service after which the first 2 stages are run again in the dark. Total distance for leg 1 is 106 miles. Mitsubishi's John Everett told us about his company's involvement for the year.
Well, we're really excited with Mitsubishi Rally Team USA. We have a factory-backed effort with Mitsubishi Motor Sales of America. It's a first for this season where we have an actual works-backed Group 2 Lancer. It's a Lancer production vehicle, and we're excited about that with Lachlan O'Sullivan leading it up in the driver's position, co-driver with Matt Chester. Also moving into the open category is Reese Millen. He's an exceptional driver. We're really proud of what he's done for Mitsubishi at Pikes Peak, and also with all the performances in 2001. So we're looking for between Lachlan and Reese Millen, and also with Millen's co-driver Gary Cowan. Hopefully we can garner a manufacturer's championship this year. And it's going to be a fun challenge with Subaru and Hyundai. They're great competitors, and this is a great series.
When most people decide to go racing in the SCCA, they look at all the different classes the SCCA has to offer. But what Joe Gaudette did is he just looked right into his garage where he found this beautiful red Corvette Z06. How'd you make the transition to decide to drive your street car?
Yeah, I just decided one day after doing a lot of driving events that I was going to go racing with the SCCA. I caged the car and brought it up to T1 specs and decided I was going to dive right in head first.
Now, over the course of the year, you had to get to the runoffs, this being your rookie year. What'd you do to actually save some money so you can make it this far?
I've run on a lot of used parts. I buy used tires, especially from competitors that race against me. I also work a little bit of overtime with my job. I wouldn't change anything I've done this year for the world. It's been a heck of a ride, and I'm just glad to be here.
Back on track, you're watching Joseph Gaudette right now, circulating around. It's great to be able to race the way that he's racing.
That is a huge commitment for a man to make, to take your street car, which is a very expensive street car at that, and then convert it to a race car, knowing that you can full and well lose the whole package.
Yeah, I've always said, if you want to go showroom stock racing or touring car racing in T1, T2, T3, you need to be willing to say, I can wad this up into a little ball and leave it at the garbage can at the racetrack, because you have to face those realities. But right now, he's doing a great job.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like I say, it's a huge commitment for a person to make because those bad things do happen in racing.
And it's got to stay in the back of your mind when you're mixing it up out there as well, going, hey, this thing needs to stay in one piece.
Of course, we used to drive our race cars from home to the racetrack and then race them and drive them back sometimes.
Yeah, big moment for us, but let's talk a little bit about the takeaway from the 2012 season. Naturally, we expect Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, and the like will be back and tougher next year, but so many questions. What will Mercedes have with Lewis Hamilton alongside Nico Rosberg? And what a moment for Nico Hülkenberg as he prepares to join the Sauber team.
Yeah, I feel sorry for Nico. I really think he should be the guy that's going to be driving the McLaren. I'm sure McLaren next year are going to be very, very strong. I can't believe that Ferrari aren't going to make some sort of a comeback after this year. And, of course, Red Bull with Adrian Newey, who is absolutely the key man in any team at the moment, still looking very strong for next year. So I think 2013 should be a very exciting year.
Absolutely titanic battle right through 2012. Amazing performance by all at Red Bull and Renault. Yes, they had their hiccups with reliability problems on the alternators, but when it mattered, they did bring the car home. They locked out the Constructors' Championship, $300 million plus in 3 years in terms of prize money. That will all fund the 2013 car. They were back in force. And, of course, the two big names in Formula One we always talk about, McLaren, Mercedes, they want it more than anything else. And, of course, Ferrari, they would love to take the Constructors' Championship next year. So going into 2013, it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal battle for success in Formula One.
The sad thing is, I mean, obviously at the end of any season it's very emotional for the teams down there. We've known that. We've seen the emotion in, for instance, Felipe Massa. They'll all be going out to have a very good time tonight. But for us in particular, this is a very sad moment too. 16 years with Speed Vision morphing into Speed, and this is our last ever race on Speed, which is going to be very sad for all of us, I'm sure, especially you, Bob, who won't be following Steve and me along to NBC next year, which we're very lucky to be doing, and it's been great working alongside you. It's 23 years since we did our first Formula One race together, and we've always just had the greatest time, and we've seen some fantastic racing over those years, there's no doubt about it. And of course it was great when Steve came along to replace me when I went off to do Le Mans, and you came and never went away again. Still there.
You couldn't get rid of me. You couldn't get rid of me. Well, I mean, I have to say, working with Speed Vision and Speed Channel and Speed over the last 13 years for me has absolutely changed my entire life. I've worked for 2 Formula One teams, got great success in the pit lane with Benetton, won the Constructors' Championship there, which is the height of my career in the pit lane, working with Benetton, and now working with everybody at Speed has been an absolutely phenomenal experience. And as I say, quite literally, it has changed the course of my entire life. I'm now fully focused really on having a fun time in the United States, and I don't want to go, really. I love being in America, and I absolutely love bringing Formula One to a very, very enthusiastic audience that has watched us over the last 13 years.
Well, Steve has always been very keen to point out that Formula One is a team sport. Everybody matters, from, as Bob says, the lowliest mechanic pushing a beam to, of course, the driver. And certainly with Speed and Speed Vision, the team has been absolutely paramount. We've had great directors, great producers, and a great backup team from everybody here, from Frank Wilson right down through the group. And it's been a marvellous time working for Speed. And it's going to take they've set a very high bar to take over. There's no doubt about it.
At the beginning of the show, we saw you and Sam welcoming that first Speed Vision audience 296 Grand Prix races ago. Did you ever dream we'd be here today?
I didn't. You're right, Bob. It's absolutely incredible, really. 290 races has been absolutely fabulous. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And as I say, what a wonderful team Speed has been. And it's so sad to see them breaking up now, not doing the races anymore.
Well, all things change, and now it's time for us to change as well. And I'd just like to say, David, it's been a great ride. Steve, thanks to you. We'll call Will Buxton home. We'll chat with him. Look for the final edition of Formula One Debrief coming up next weekend. It's been a great ride. And now I'd like to take a small moment to say a few words. It's a moment that I really hoped would never come. Next year, as David mentioned, Formula One moves to a new broadcast home here in the USA, ending Speed's 17-year run, as you know. It also ends a long partnership with my fellow announcers, David, Steve, and Will, who will follow Formula One to its new network while I continue my career here at Speed. My thanks to all of you out there for all the kind words on social media, recalling all of the race weekends around the world we've shared in the last decade and a half or so. The future for Grand Prix racing here in America, I think, looks bright, with a great new event in Austin, Texas, and a second planned for New Jersey in 2014. Like you, I'll be watching. We'll leave you today with a look back at the past 17 seasons. It's been a great ride, and now, for the final time, for David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, Will Buxton, Sam Posey, and all who've worked on our Speed Formula One team, I'm Bob Varsha. So long, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Posey, and with me is David Hobbs. And the two of us would like to welcome you to the debut of Formula One on Speed Vision.
I'm Bob Varsha, and let me start by saying how proud all of us at Speed Vision are to be bringing you this historic race. Joining me once again, as he did for yesterday's live coverage of qualifying, former Benetton Grand Prix mechanic turned journalist and author, Steve Matchett.
Bob, thanks very much for inviting me back. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
This is Bo Derek, so we interview her. I'm absolutely amazed to meet you both.
And like David Hobbs on a Saturday night, the event is subject to blackout.
McLaren don't share the same problems that Williams and Ferrari have had to some extent. That was Simone, his girlfriend.
If she played the cards right, she could be my girlfriend.
Hello, I'm Derek Daly.
She said if I cozied up to her, she would talk to me. And she looks lovely, very Formula One.
Kimi Raikkonen didn't have bad luck. He wouldn't have any luck at all. I mean, it is uncanny, the stuff that goes wrong with this man's cars.
Here's Raikkonen telling all the boys on the boat exactly what happened.
He's my hero.
Welcome back to David Hobbs' used car lot.
He looks about like my cat does when I give it a big hand like that.
Extreme psychological problems, but look at that. The British Marshals doing a terrific job.
Leave me alone. I know what to do.
I'm in America, baby.
Dragons everywhere. Red flag destroys most of the field here. Nobody is going to stop him. Look at this. What?
Oh.
He takes it. Oh, come on.
Around the outside. Wow. He is the... Oh! And the checker's out. Now, who is that going to block? Who's blown up?
It's a Ferrari.
The Ferrari is stopping. Wheel to wheel.
He does it.
Oh, man.
huge crash. Kubica. Oh.
Send him, boys. You've got that Lewis is right behind.
You don't think Alonso's playing mind games with Hamilton here, do you?
Oh, no. Keep going.
Oh, he's stuck.
He's beached it. You can't do that. Lewis, you're going to have to let him by. Can this be happening?
It's over, boys. It's over.
For the lead. Oh, no. Wow. That is Mark Webber has gone over. Oh.
Fantastic, guys. Stop there for number 2 driver. Cheers.
Fernando is faster than you.
There it is.
Oh, boy.
There it is.
That's a bit brazen.
Oh, got to spin. That's Hamilton. Got sideways.
Oh.
And Roman Grosjean and Fernando Alonso.
I'm beginning to think that that's the official anthem for Formula One racing. It's about to be linked with Ferrari for always in the record books. As Michael Schumacher wins, it's Damon Hill's moment here at long last.
Contrary consensus, the battle, but they have contacted.
He is the 1997 Formula One World Champion.
Finland has another world champion.
The first from his nation to drive for Ferrari, and now he picks up that long-awaited first career win.
41st victory, which puts you in equal second all-time with Ayrton Senna. Do those records mean a lot to you?
Yes, it does mean a lot to me.
But Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari as the flags wave and the crowd cheers will win the U.S. Grand Prix at Indianapolis. Schumacher will win the race and with it the World Championship for Ferrari, the first since Jody Scheckter in 1979. Kimi Raikkonen in Malaysia has been in a class of his own.
Fernando Alonso, he'll take the checkered flag to become the youngest Formula One winner in history.
6 cars and 6 cars only will take the start of the 6th United States Grand Prix at Indianapolis. What a farce. It's all about Fernando Alonso Diaz of Spain, who comes through to become Spain's first ever Formula One world champion. His 90th career win and perhaps his final one at Monza for Ferrari.
I've decided together with the team that I'm going to retire from racing.
Victory for the first time in his career to Lewis Hamilton of McLaren Mercedes. In the most improbable of ways, Kimi Raikkonen of Finland will win the 2007 Formula One championship for Ferrari. And now a new page is written as 21-year-old Sebastian Vettel wins his first Formula One victory and the first for his team. Felipe Massa has done everything he needed to do to win the World Championship, but it's not over yet. That's Timo Glock. That's Timo Glock. Wow, he's done it. And he will come from behind to claim the world title. The racing gods are just playing with us. The youngest world champion in history and Abu Dhabi Grand Prix winner Sebastian Vettel of Red Bull Racing.
Think of Formula One as a merry-go-round, a sort of carousel. 17 years ago, it stopped for us to climb aboard. We had no idea then how long our ride was going to be. But as the years went by, we began to hope it might never end. Well, now it has, and it's time to say goodbye. Many fans shared the ride with us. Our thanks to each of you for coming along. We had a lot of fun together, don't you think?
Get ready.
It's Pure Michigan 400. Joey Logano is the 45th driver to win a pole here, and he has just run the 9th fastest pole lap of all time in NASCAR.
Yeah, there's amazing speed out of all these first 10 cars. Just a great day of qualifying.
Logano and Kurt Busch will share the front row here at Michigan on Sunday ahead of Jimmy Johnson, Mark Martin, and the rest of the field. For 18 years, it's been our honor and privilege to present Motorsports, an automotive-related program to you on the network that began as Speed Vision, became Speed Channel, and is now known as Speed. From the visionaries who started this network, from maintenance to management, from the talent to the truck drivers, we've shared your passion for motorsport over these many years. We love that you care as much about your cars as family, God, and country, and so do we. But now, it's time to switch off the ignition and turn in the keys. This is the end of speed in America. We hope you'll follow us on our new journey to Fox Sports 1, because all your favorite live NASCAR programming and much more is coming along with us. So now, it's good night and farewell to America's Motorsports Authority, Speed.
Good morning, and welcome to the very first day of Fox Sports 1. Here on America's new sports network, our promise to you is that we will share your passion for the game, never take ourselves too seriously, and most importantly, never put ourselves above the game nor the athletes. We will be informative without ever sacrificing accuracy. We work for you, the fan, and every day we will live up to this simple promise. Now, let's get on with the show.
3, 2, 1. Alabama again, the champions of college football.
The 2012 season ended with the Crimson Tide hoisting the Crystal Trophy. Now, a new season is here.
Good evening. Welcome into NASCAR Race Hub. It's a sad day for all of us at Fox Sports and in the entire NASCAR world. We learned earlier today that our good friend Steve Burns passed away after a long fight against cancer. With Danielle Trotta, I'm Adam Alexander. In the next hour, we will celebrate Steve's life with those who knew him best.
Today is a day we prayed would never come, and a moment we hoped we'd never have to share together. But we wanted to pay tribute to our good friend who meant so much to so many of you.
And now a time of reflection as Ken Squire looks back at some moments we will never forget. Steve doing what he loved to do and carrying a smile every step of the way.
This is Dale Earnhardt from Martinsville Speedway with Steve. What's your last name, Steve? Burns.
Steve Burns simply could never learn to do it wrong.
I'm sorry, I didn't like that. Well, hold on. Oh, man.
You had her going good.
It was that thoughtfulness, that extra effort to get it right.
Let's do one more.
That made Burnsy such a joy to work with. Such a joy to be with.
I wanted to be spicy mustard. Estrada. Football and crab cakes. That's what I'm talking about. That's Maryland. That's Maryland. Since you make fun of my Maryland Terrapins, I said if you can't beat them, join them. Join them. There you go. All right, let's go. Come on, go. Let's go. Matt Kenseth, I'm doing something very important right here. This guy. He's my special boy.
If he disagreed with what you thought was the way to do it, you had best take heed.
Now, just cue the animation.
His sense of how things fit together, his thoughtfulness about ramifications down the road, always made his voice important.
Some media did make the decision to camp out and try and shoot video of the service. However, out of respect for the family in their time of grief, we did not.
He was never mean, nor snide, nor sneaky. Just said his piece directly.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. It was always sincere, thoughtful. Steve thought a lot of his work and had belief in what he did. He always wanted what he worked on to add understanding to any story, any interview, whatever he was involved in. No question, the greatest involvement in Steve Burns' life started at a racetrack when he met Karen Goins. We used to chide him about his marriage made in Martinsville, whatever track. For 20 years, it's been a solid one. And when their son Bryson, now 12, made his way onto the circuit, it became a family for the ages.
Every night at the end of the show, I say, have an awesome night, which is actually our way at Totally of NASCAR of saying thanks for watching. Well, today, July 23rd, the most awesome thing happened to me because Bryson Parker Burns was born. So Bryson, you tell him to have an awesome night.
Yes. Steve, with those shoulders and his agility, had made a heck of a quarterback at a high school up in Maryland. And Bryson looks like he's made of the same stuff.
Eric, nice job, man. You too.
Up next on NASCAR Race, how we'll get you set for this weekend.
Steve Burns' work was good. No, not just good. Damn good. He wrote well. He asked good questions. He had a warmth and charm that came through in the way he wrote and spoke.
What you choose to do at that time is entirely up to you.
No nonsense. Motorsports was fortunate to have a Steve Burns. His life work for me could always be defined in something Richard Petty framed years ago when Richard was asked how he wished to be remembered. And the King said, "I had a job that I liked very much, and hopefully people thought I did it pretty well." Indeed, Steve Burns did, and became a measure for us all.
No doubt if Steve were here with us tonight, he'd say we welcome in double trouble. Larry McReynolds
right.
and Jeff Hammond are with us on the program. And you three, Steve and the two of you, spent a lot of time together here in the studio and in the television booth at the track. And I know you guys have some amazing memories of those times together.
Well, you know, the thing that's funny is how the sport brought us together. I mean, I first met Steve was when, you know, I was working as a crew chief and he was doing television. You saw some of the interviews he was doing with Earnhardt. Well, he was talking to Larry and I at that time also. And that's really where we kind of got to know him and found out what really a great guy he was. And he was very insightful, had a great personality. And then when we got brought together as part of the Fox team, it just got better. Because we found out that not only is he a great friend, always has been a great friend, but what kind of a teacher he was, what kind of a coach he was, as far as making us into, I don't want to say we're television people yet because we had a lot of work. I got a lot of work to do, but he really helped a lot, didn't he, Larry?
Yeah, I mean, the first time that I met Steve, we made those 3 trips over to Japan, and I think it was Suzuka in '97, and they had a rec room at the hotel for us to go hang out because there was nowhere to go in Suzuka, Japan. And I remember Steve and I and a bunch of us in there, all they had in there for us to drink was hot beer, but we drank their hot beer. But the biggest thing with Steve Burns, he always had fun with what he did. It did not matter if it was a serious interview or all the years that we spent together on trackside. I remember the special edition of trackside at Talladega on Halloween when we all dressed up. Steve Burns dressed up like Ric Flair. I'm talking, he had it going. He had the blonde hair. He had the robe. He did Ric Flair better than Ric Flair could do Ric Flair, but Steve always did everything to the fullest, and he had fun with what he did.
We are just scratching the surface with Burnsy stories. Throughout the hour, we'll continue to share memories of Steve. Here are a few more from some friends and colleagues.
My best memory really of Steve is over a period of about 10 years when we worked out of the same office trailer together at the racetrack, and I'd always try to get there early in the morning, and I never beat Steve there. He was always there before me. He was always in there working, and there was one morning I tried to go in there just at the crack of dawn, and I walked in there, and Steve was already there, and he turned around and he said, "Where you been?" He was already there and working really hard.
One time after a race, I was in a really bad mood, and he came to try to interview me, and I did the interview, but I kind of gave him a dirty look, and I'm like, well, how much longer? Because we're sitting there waiting on the commercial or something. I don't know, and I was in a very foul mood, so I very much offended him, and I knew I did, and I apologized, and he's kind of stubborn like me, so I had to find him the next week and apologize again, and then I had to find him the week after that and apologize again, and then so finally he forgave me, and I then became his favorite driver.
I think my best memory of Steve Burns took place at Las Vegas, and it also included one of our original teammates, Dick Bergeron, and it was Dick's rental car. He had me drive in the post-race escape, and Steve sat in the back seat. And long story short, as we were backing up out of the tunnel, trying to jump in another lane that was moving much faster, we heard a big crunch. And Dick was like, "Oh, dear God, this is my rental car." And as we pulled out of the tunnel, we got going down the road, and we came to a stoplight. I said, Steve, look out, and just see if you can see if everything's okay. And he opened the door, and he looked under the rocker panel, and he goes, oh yeah, everything's good to go. You can't see a thing. And when I looked in the mirror, he gave me this facial expression which said 1,000 words of, oh my goodness, we have wrecked the car.
Yeah, so Steve Burns and I would sing The Chase Is On. And we did that Chase Is On show for a couple of years. And when my first opportunity to do that show was because I didn't make the chase. And I feel like, in a way, it was kind of a gift to get to meet Steve and be a part of that. He truly is. And he's one of the greatest guys I've met in this sport, and I learned a lot about him through that show. He's always prepared. He's always got a smile on his face. He got something positive to say, and he's a respectable man. And he's straightforward too, though. If there's something he doesn't like, he'll tell you. But there's no beating around the bush. I mean, I learned a lot doing that show with him, and he's so good at TV, and he was so good at his job, and he was so kind to me, to help me, and to make me feel like I was really a part of it, and that I was doing well when I know I wasn't. But he's just an awesome guy.
He is an awesome guy. That friendship between Carl Edwards and Steve Burns really meant a lot to Burnsy and to Carl, as you just heard. And last season, before Carl climbed in the car to drive hundreds of miles, he asked for a cell phone and he called Steve at the house just to make sure he was doing okay. A very special friendship.
Undoubtedly, when you talk about the friends that he's made out there, Carl's not the only one he feels that way about it. I mean, I think you can see the way Matt Kenseth respected him to go back and want to apologize. I've never had one come and apologize for me for offending me. So I think he really did. He worked very hard to develop that. And when I think about some of those moments that we've been able to share with him, you go back, you talk about the Halloween deal at trackside. I remember some of the ones we had here at Charlotte during the Coca-Cola 600 weekend downtown Charlotte on North Tryon and Trade, and the audience is out there. We were doing stage dives, and we had Jody Messina, we've had Ken Stabler, Jerry Rice on trackside. He was able to help put together, along him and Mark Smith, put some of the greatest talents and stars on our shows to give us an opportunity to hang out. And on top of that, trying to corral me and Larry and Darrell Walter is almost like being trying
to corral cats.
Right. Basically the ringmaster at Ringler Brothers Barnum Bailey Circus and three-ring circus deal.
He did it well.
He did it well.
But balancing the personalities in the garage, and we know how temperamental drivers can be. And I think about the many difficult circumstances Steve was placed in as a pit reporter, and him to be able to handle it and come out on the other side the best of friends.
And this never made air, but I know for a fact, because his pit spotter told me about it, Kyle Busch had not had a good race somewhere. And Kyle, after the race, was walking to the motor coach lot, and Steve was running him down, and Kyle just looked at him and kept walking, and Steve said, hey, you can keep walking, but I'm not going to chase after you. If you want to stop, your fans want to hear how your night went, but I'm not going to keep chasing you. And you know what? Kyle Busch stopped and did their interview.
I think you can understand the friendship that developed between Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Steve Burns. Wasn't there the same kind of elk there? They were strong, sometimes stubborn men.
Very much so, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think a lot of people realize how much of a friendship that he and Dale Earnhardt had, along with Neil Bonnet. I mean, they were really a lot thicker than I think a lot of people understand. And there was a lot of footage that Steve worked with Dale on to shoot that gave some great insight to really the man that Dale Earnhardt really was. And I think that that's the kind of thing that he kept. He wasn't the kind of guy that went out and boasted about the fact that he was good friends with these people. He kept it under his hat, and I think he really cherished those friendships, but he did not ever infringe upon their privacy.
I would say just a few hours ago, Dale Earnhardt said, "Where the hell you been, Burns?"
I think that's probably
Exactly
very
right.
true. Defending champion Kevin Harvick was at the White House today being honored for his 2014 Sprint Cup Series championship. And during the visit, President Obama offered his condolences to the Burns family.
I also want to offer my condolences to everybody in the NASCAR community on the passing of a legendary reporter and broadcaster, Steve Burns. And I know a lot of fans' thoughts and prayers today are with his wife, Karen, and his son, Bryson.
Special words from the president today and the entire NASCAR community speaking out on the loss of Steve Burns. This from six-time champion Jimmy Johnson. My heart goes out to the Burns family. Hashtag Burns Strong. And Tony Stewart saying very sad to hear about our friend Steve Burns passing away today. Huge loss for our racing family. He was one of the best ever. We will miss you. Kyle Busch saying this via Twitter. My thoughts and prayers are with the Burns family. Steve was a great man and a blessing to all that knew him. He will be greatly missed. Dale Earnhardt Jr. saying, my hope is Steve was able to see how much he was loved and appreciated by so many. Rest easy, friend. Prayers to his family. Danica Patrick saying, sad to hear that Steve Burns passed away. His last tweet, I went the distance. You did, my friend. Heaven gained a real fighter today. And Joey Logano saying, so sorry to hear about Steve. My thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Hashtag Burns Strong. We continue our tribute to Steve Burns in a moment. You're watching a special edition of NASCAR Race Hub on Fox Sports 1.
For me, my first exposure to the awesome Steve Burns was through my ASA days. So I would go back to maybe 97-ish, I guess, 98, somewhere in there. And I was just trying to find my way into asphalt racing, grew up racing off-road and motocross. And in my first real exposure in stock car racing on asphalt at all was in the ASA series. And as everybody knows, that's a pretty stout series. So to come in, I mean, I don't know, 19, 20, something like that, trying to find my way around the racetracks, the pit area, get to know folks. I met this extremely nice and friendly TV guy named Steve Burns. And that point on formed a friendship with him and a bond that I'll never forget.
A great story there from six-time champion Jimmy Johnson talking about Steve Burns, and with us now on NASCAR Race Hub, the voice of NASCAR on Fox, Mike Joy. I know you and Steve have worked together on countless shows, countless broadcasts over the years. Your thoughts and reflections on the news we've heard today, Mike?
Well, it has been a long time, and it's been a great time. My wife asks, how can God give cancer to someone so good? God made a mistake, but I think once he realized that mistake with the outpouring of love from all of us, he gave Steve a great gift. He gave him time and gave us time, to Dale Jr.'s tweet, to show him how much we all loved him and how much we all appreciated him. My wife was texting back and forth with Karen and Steve during the race. She texted to both of them how proud she was of the job that Bryson did and talking about his best friend and his dad. And Karen tweeted back right away, and Steve tweeted back just a little bit later. He was very, very proud of his son. And he fully felt throughout the day and that long, long evening just how much everyone in this sport cared about him and loved him and still does. He is just such a very, very special person. We got Happy Birthday Steve Burns trending. And when I saw him on Tuesday, I told him that he was pretty excited. He goes, yeah, Bryson says trending, And it was very, very cool. But he knew how much we all cared. And I think that should give us some comfort.
Yeah, we all know how much Steve loved NASCAR. And on Sunday at Bristol, we found out just how much NASCAR loved him. And there are many words we could use to describe Steve Burns, but we asked some of his closest friends to use just one.
If I had to describe Steve in just a couple of words, it would be that he's real, he's kind, and he's honest.
The word that stands out is genuine.
The one word I would use to describe Steve Burns is compassionate.
Just kind. He just was always a kind man.
One word that I think defines him very well is his love for people and the ultimate professional.
Infectious, I feel like he's one of those guys that once he started talking, people listened. When he laughed, others were laughing too.
The one thing that I think I take away from all of this is courageous.
I think the biggest thing is just being courageous, you know, seeing what he's went through the last year and everything that he's been fighting for.
Steve's a genuinely a great guy who loves his family, who's a good role model.
Not only do you see Steve and talk and think, wow, a great guy, there's a feeling that came with your moments with Steve Burns, and it's pretty rare.
Steve always seemed like he was happy and looking forward to his job and you know, really wanted to talk to you and ask you about the racing.
There's a few people in life that you run across and they just make you feel good because they're always smiling, never really have anything negative to say, and that kind of personifies Steve Burns.
He's fun, you know, very positive, always smiling. But I mean, in one word, just he's a really warm personality and very well liked, well respected.
He's the kind of guy that I think all of us hope that we can be.
Some strong words there from some of the biggest names in NASCAR. You got one word for Steve Burns, Mike?
No, but I've got two. Steve always wanted to get the story. He never wanted to be the story. And he did his job with a combination of humor and grace and professionalism. And every time someone would come to me and say, I want to do this. Who should I emulate? How should I do this job? Or when I'd talk to someone who I thought needed a little guidance and a push in the right direction, I'd always say, be like Steve Burns. And I had to ask him last time I saw him, who's going to be my role model now? So my two words, role model.
Very good. You know, the one word that I thought of was dedication. He was dedicated to NASCAR, as you and I both know, dedicated to his career and all of us at NASCAR on Fox, but perhaps most of all, dedicated to his family.
Oh,
Karen
certainly.
of 22 years, his wife, and of course his 12-year-old son, Bryson.
His other love, football.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of his greatest, proudest moments in his career was the opportunity that Fox gave him to call an NFL game. It was a Charlotte Panthers game, and he did the play-by-play. And he came back with that, you know, measure of humility that he has. He says, you know, I could have done better, but boy, I had a blast doing it.
And here you see here in Bill Moss talking football. It was a great opportunity for Steve to get to work for NFL on Fox. Good to have Mike Joy with us. More stories about Steve Burns when we continue on this special edition of NASCAR Race Hub.
Welcome back to this special edition of NASCAR Race Hub. Today, the NASCAR community mourning the loss of Stephen Patrick Burns, who passed away this morning at the age of 56. Throughout the hour, we are honoring and remembering our good friend, Steve Burns. Alongside Adam Alexander, I'm Danielle Trotta. We'd like to welcome in Steve's good friend, Darrell Waltrip, joining us now. Darrell, it's so great that on Sunday at Bristol Motor Speedway, Steve got to see all of us celebrate his life. And one of the last times I spoke with him, he said a big thank you to everybody. His heart was filled with so much love, and he got to see how many people he touched. What was it you loved about Burnsy?
Well, I heard you ask the other guys, one word. Steve's not a one-word guy. He's a journalist, and I learned so much from him. We worked together for years, and I worked along beside of him, and I loved his personality. He was warm and engaging. He made you feel comfortable. Some of the interviews I've watched him do with the celebrities in our sport, Martha Earnhardt comes to mind, others, that delicate situations that Steve would handle with so much class. But then I have to laugh, and I know you do too, and you may have already played the interview he did with Tony Stewart out in California a couple of years ago. But that's Burns at his finest. When there was an interview that had to be done and nobody else wanted to do it, and don't ask me, we'd send old Burnsy in and he'd get the job done. But just like Sunday, I'm sure I know he watched, and I know he had to be as proud as he could possibly be. But you know what? You'd never know it, because that's the kind of guy he was. You know why he was happy? Because of Karen and Bryson. We've been here for Steve through this whole battle with cancer, but now we got to be here for Karen and Bryson now that Steve has passed. And so he loved Bryson. It's his best buddy. We saw the interview Bryson did before the race Sunday at Bristol. That's one of the things that I know as a dad that always kind of touched my heart, what it would be like if my girls didn't have me here to help take care of them, watch after them. And I'm sure that poor Bryson is going to miss his dad more than anybody. And so Burns was a great journalist, a great TV personality, but he was a greater father, a greater husband. He loved the Lord. We went to his house. Danielle, we went over to his house a couple weeks ago. Stevie and I did. Knocked on the door. Burns comes to the door, opens that door, got that big smile on his face. You would have never, ever known anything was wrong. We came in, sat down, we drank coffee. We talked about baseball and his nephews. We talked about how bright Bryson is and his future, he and Karen's relationship. And it was so good just to sit there and just chat. And not once was there a word said about his cancer or what was going to happen to him. It was like it didn't even exist. And that's the way Burns was. I mean, he was a humble man. And I learned so much from him. I like so many others. If I had a really tough interview I wanted to do, I'd go ask Burns now, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should ask? Because Burns is one of those guys, somebody said a long time ago that a journalist is supposed to stand on the side and clap, not be a part of the parade. And that's Steve Burns. And my one word would be respect. If you've been here 56 years, and when you leave here, everybody that ever came in, that knew you or ever came in touch with you, respected you, that's about as good as it can get.
You know, Darrell, you and I were talking recently about the NASCAR on Fox family, and one of the words that you used was comfortable. You say everybody's so comfortable together. And at the foundation of that, one of our ring leaders over the years, Steve Burns.
Yeah, there's no question about it. He was just one of those guys that he never knew a stranger. He was always comfortable in any situation, no matter how difficult it might be or how uncomfortable someone else might be. Steve could come in with that big smile and that warm heart and cheer things up. And the first thing you know, he had you eating out of the palm of his hand. He was a Southern gentleman. He was a real gentleman. And his legacy, it's not just what he has done. His legacies will be something we'll be talking about years to come. And that's important, too. Not that he's gone and we're going to honor him now, and we honored him Sunday, and now we got to get on with the task at hand, which we're really kind of bad to do sometime. We got to think about Burns every time we get ready to do something, and we got to think about Karen and Bryson and their future as well. So I'm proud of our community. My gosh, our community. The drivers, NASCAR, do you imagine what it took to put that Burn Strong program together, Stand Up for Cancer? Only a few short days to put that together. Our boss, Eric Shanks, and Megan and a couple of, just 2 or 3 people got behind that thing and worked their hearts out and got it done, and what an incredible day it was. And it was an all-day and all-night affair, and I know it meant a lot to Steve, and I know it'll mean a lot to Bryson and Karen as we go down the road.
Darrell, as always, we appreciate your words. We'll see you this weekend at Richmond. Thanks for being with us on NASCAR Race Hub.
You heard DW mention the moment of Steve Burns interviewing Tony Stewart post-race. He chuckled about that one. You'll see that and more of Steve's best on-air moments right after the break. Stay with us as we honor our good friend.
We are back on a very special edition of NASCAR Race Hub, as today we honor the life and legacy of our friend and colleague, Steve Burns, who today lost his battle with cancer at the age of 56.
Earlier this afternoon, NASCAR Chairman and CEO Brian France released this statement. NASCAR extends its condolences to the many friends, Fox Sports colleagues, and family of Steve Burns. Whether you had the privilege of knowing him or if you watched him on television for the last 3 decades, Steve's work ethic and authenticity made him a beloved individual inside and outside the garage. His level of professionalism was matched only by the warmth he showed everyone he met. He battled cancer with tenacity and was a true inspiration to everyone in the NASCAR family. Simply stated, we'll miss Steve dearly. Our thoughts are especially with his wife Karen and son Bryson during this difficult time.
And Danielle, this from Richard Petty. Steve was a person who had a real passion for his job, and that's what made him stand out as one of the best he did. He was always humble too, and I never saw him treat anyone unfairly. That's just how he did his job and lived his life. He always treated myself, our family, and our race teams with great respect, and I admired him for that. He will be missed by many of our families. Thoughts and prayers are with Karen, Bryson, and the rest of his family. Steve loved NASCAR, but his love for sports didn't stop there.
I think what would surprise a lot of people is his knowledge for sports in general. Man, he knew it all. I mean, you know, I always thought Steve Burns was just a race reporter. I mean, he knows about everything.
Steve is just a sports fan. His love for those Maryland Terrapins, his love for the Washington Redskins. We gave him a hard time about that the last few years for obvious reasons, but I promise you, Steve would not give up on those Redskins.
Well, Steve was a quarterback in college, at the same college that I went to at a different time. But he loved football, and man, he was a good quarterback.
I remember the conversation him and I had when Fox asked him to go do some play-by-play work at some football games, a Carolina Panther game, and he was absolutely so excited.
Steve would always say, "Hail to the Redskins." He came to work every day here at Fox Sports 1 in workout pants or either a Maryland Terrapins t-shirt or an App State football shirt and a baseball cap. Just an everyday guy who earned the respect of everyone around him. Good friends with Dale Earnhardt Sr. And now, from one champion to another, here's Brad Keselowski offering his memories of Steve.
As many of you know, today I was scheduled to be the guest race analyst on Race Hub. But when I sat in this seat here today, I couldn't help but think about the last time I was in this position. It was 2012, after I'd won the Sprint Cup Championship, and I was being interviewed by Steve Burns. Now, Steve passed away today, and we're thinking about him and his family. So rather than spend today's show talking about Bristol, I thought it might be better if we talked about Steve, his family, and some of his colleagues' favorite memories. So here you go.
One of my funniest memories, we were at Dover for a cup race, and all of a sudden I heard somebody doing this big laugh. It always made me happy because he meant it in fun. He wasn't making fun of me.
We did a special edition Halloween show at Talladega, and we all dressed up as characters. And Steve dressed up as Ric Flair. I mean, he had it going on.
I'm a limo-riding, jet-flying, kiss-stealing, wheeling-dealing son of a gun! Woo!
He had the blonde hair, he had the robe, and after watching him, I'm not sure Ric Flair could do Ric Flair as good as Steve Burns did Ric Flair.
For a short period of time in 2014, I got to work with Steve on a fairly regular basis when we were doing some truck races.
Hey, we said it yesterday, we'll say it again. If you like speed, you've come to the right place.
He had the greatest laugh. When you really got Steve to belly roll, and the guy that did it better than anyone else, no doubt, was Jimmy Spencer. Jimmy Spencer, dressed as a leprechaun, had Steve in tears.
Welcome back to NASCAR Race Hub. Jimmy Spencer's here. Have any drivers told you they plan on using your song suggestions from Tuesday this weekend in Bristol?
You know.
I can't help it. It's fantastic.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're ready.
We were out at the Sonoma racetrack, and Hall of Famer Jerry Rice was a guest on the show. And what we did was we got Steve a football, and he was able to send Jerry Rice off the desk into the crowd, and Steve hit Jerry Rice in the hands with one of the most perfect spirals you'd ever seen thrown.
Hey, Jerry, I'd love to say that I completed a pass to Jerry Rice. Can I throw you one?
Yeah, you want me to go this way?
Yeah, man, go down there. Hey! Touchdown!
All right!
I love what you said in that piece, Danielle, the laugh. And I know Steve and I had the opportunity to talk on the phone a lot lately.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to be with Steve, if you know him at all, to see him barreling over when he laughed, even over the phone. It was infectious, his laugh.
It's very infectious. And again, you saw that one moment right there when he had an opportunity to do something that he loved to do. because he was such a great sports person, and have an opportunity to throw that pass to Jerry Rice. I mean, he was full of himself about the next month, and whether it was playing baseball. I remember we were working with, who was we working with up? Was it Kansas or someplace?
Chicago. Yeah.
And he was trying to teach one of the younger kids how to throw.
Reed Sorensen
to throw a baseball, because he was getting ready to throw the first pitch out at the Chicago game. And you were catching, and he was pitching, and I jumped in there to kind of like be the batter. I actually had a catcher's mask on, thank goodness, because Elliott Sadler decided to do a pitch, and Elliott don't pitch very well, but he hit me in the back of the head, and I never will forget. Steve was about the first person to get to me. I mean, he knocked me off my feet, hit me in the back of the head, and Steve got to, are you all right? You all right? And as soon as he realized I wasn't hurt, he started laughing, and he laughed, and they laughed for the next, I think, hour and a half, because they busted me in the back of the head.
He had no problems having fun, but when it was time to go to work, he was able to turn the corner and get the job done in one of our favorite moments of all time a couple of years ago in Fontana, California.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
The only thing he didn't do is blow on the mic before he stuck it back in that holder. And I remember, Steve, coming back to Race Hub the Monday after Fontana, he got such a kick out of that interview. I mean, he loved it. When we told him we were going to play it on the show, he took so much pride in it. He thought it was hysterical, but also the fact that he had that rapport. He had that relationship with Tony Stewart. He commanded that respect.
Exactly.
Right? In the heat of the moment, when drivers are pissed off, they'd get out of those race cars. You talked to Steve Burns, you were going to give him that soundbite, and it was just great. I love the camaraderie and the friendship. You could see the respect between those two.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of pit reporters in our sport, and they all do an unbelievable job for all the networks. But Steve Burns, probably the only reporter, that could have even gotten that interview with Tony Stewart, but could have gotten a response and then knew how to respond to Tony's response. Again, I don't know if there's a single member of any of the media that has walked through that garage area that the competitors respected more than Steve Burns.
Well said. We'll continue to honor our good friend Steve Burns without the hour here on Race Hub. Coming up, the first time some of his friends met Steve and some of his best moments on air. Stay with us.
We are back on NASCAR Race Hub as we continue to honor the life of Steve Burns, and so much conversation in recent days about the 30 years that he covered NASCAR. But his broadcasting career actually began back in 1982 at the NBC affiliate in Charleston, South Carolina. At the end of that run, he began covering NASCAR and has done so for the last 30 years, including 15 seasons of NASCAR on Fox and the last 4 right here in the studio with us. And now, some of our NASCAR family recounting their first encounter with Steve Burns.
The first time I remember running into Steve Burns was at Rockingham, and he was working for Patty Wheeler at the time. And he came over, and he was, I think, an associate producer. He was working with a camera crew, and introduced himself. And very polite young man, I remember. And again, Steve and I are not that much different as far as our ages are concerned, but he just looked so young, and at the same time, again, he seemed so energetic and excited about being a part of the NASCAR world at the time.
The first time that we really started to work together consistently was in 2007. We were working on This Week in NASCAR, and I would go over there, and I did probably, maybe 20 shows that year, and we had different people in there, whether it was Mike Waltrip or Biffle or maybe Schrader and Burns and myself, and gosh, we used to have so much fun. And the neatest thing about that was, Steve was such a professional. He was a great host. He obviously one of the best teleprompter readers you've ever seen in your life. Was really diligent about his notes, and he would lead you so well, made you feel very comfortable in those environments that you were destined to have a good show as long as Burns was on it.
I first met Steve when I was working at Sunbelt Video, and we were starting a show called Inside Winston Cup Racing, and it eventually became Inside NASCAR. He didn't have much NASCAR experience. In fact, he came from a different background in television. He was relatively young at the time and looking for something to get into in sports, and boy, did he fit in very well. He was the ultimate professional in the sport, and he had fun at it, and it made it easier for those who were working with him to do their jobs because he enjoyed what he was doing. And one thing that impressed me about Steve is they did not take him too long to build respect in the garage area. The teams and the drivers learned very quickly that they could confide in him if they needed to. If it didn't need to go on the air that day or the next week or whenever it did, he would honor their wishes. And they respected that. And so he became a very popular individual, not only with the drivers and the people in the garage area, but also with the fans.
Doesn't Ned Jarrett always know just what to say? Now, he was one of my role models, both in life and in the broadcast booth, obviously one of Steve's as well, and that just puts it so well. So we know Burns was a great reporter. He was great hosting this show. He was great at reading teleprompter, but I think he was really in his element hosting Trackside. What of just a freewheeling, no script, no holds barred, hey, the show's heavy. Well, too bad. We're having fun.
Yeah, and I never will forget, Jeff talked earlier about we would go down to Charlotte at Speed Street, and it was at the end of the show, and Elliott Sadler was going to do the dive out in the crowd. We were still live. Elliott Sadler went off the stage, and Burns watched him go off the stage and said, okay, now. And it's like everybody's checking on Elliott, but we knew we had to finish the show. We were still live.
Yeah, by the way, the crowd did not catch him.
No, they missed him. They missed him, but that was the way Steve was. He was always ready to anticipate and handle I guess you might say, the fastball, and that's exactly what he did that night, because there was Elliott basically getting ready to go to the hospital and Burns up there closing out the show with you.
And Mike, you'll relate to this because if you remember, for so many years, Steve would do the introduction for the Sprint All-Star race.
That's right.
And you and I and Darryl, we would do the race and we would do the preliminary race, and then we would be kind of down for about 30 or 40 minutes while the introductions were going on. Jeff was down there. And I remember one year, I think a live crowd just stimulated Steve Burns. If you remember, he started the introduction off kind of normal, and by the time he got to the end of it, you would have thought he was introducing the main event for a wrestling match because he was over the top with it and just having a big old time with it.
I don't know who's going to impersonate Ric Flair now, or Sterling Marlin, because there's nobody in the history of NASCAR broadcasting that could say stick in a spoke like Steve Burns.
That's right.
Our buddy. More after this.
The first time I came across Steve Burns was probably when I was 20 years old. I had a little NASCAR blog that I was writing, and I had wanted to do an interview with Steve for my website. So I forget how I came across his email address, but I just sent him an email and kind of asked if he'd be willing to do an interview with me for my website. And I remember being like so excited when I saw in my inbox that he had responded and he was willing to do it. And that kind of began our friendship, I guess, per se. That was the first time I'd ever communicated with him, but I remember being really excited to actually hear back from somebody that I had watched for so many years and someone I really respected. And it was neat because he actually took time out of his day to answer some girl he didn't even know, which I thought was pretty cool.
A memory from Caitlin Vincey on Steve Burns there as another young reporter in the NASCAR business. I agree with Caitlin. When I came on the scene, I knew nothing, and Steve mentored me and taught me the right way to come up in this sport and in this business.
Tonight's been the right way in honoring him, because if it hadn't been for Steve Burns probably being in here tonight, I think this would have been a lot more emotional than what it's been so far.
Yeah, I heard the word role model, and he's my role model, how he differentiated what he did for a living and family, but mainly his love for his family.
I think in honor of Steve, we should go off the air tonight, Steve Burns style. As we say goodnight on this edition of NASCAR Race Hub, we say, have an awesome night, everybody.
The guy you saw on television was always having a smile on his face. That was the real Steve Burns. And I think about all the people, including myself, that were blessed and had an opportunity to learn from him.
I don't think there's any way to describe how much we all miss Steve. I know I speak for myself. I don't think there's any way to measure it. But I think what we have to do is celebrate Steve Burns' life, because that's what Steve Burns did every single day.
Steve was well loved inside that garage area. He's meant so much to me, just as a friend, but just in that garage area, he's just a special guy.
Steve Burns
probably has the utmost respect from the drivers, the crew members, the team owners, you name it, on down the line. He garners a lot of respect out of that garage area, and deservedly so.
His smile was something that helped get me through every day. And I just can't ever say that I've had a better friend than Steve Burns.
All I know is that from this day forward, I want to be more like Steve Burns. Because he's a good man. He's a good man. We're going to miss him.